Hello, Delegate, Wranglers. I am so sorry for the slight delay we've had there. Um, it's been an interesting one. Are we live? I can't tell. Did somebody tell me? Dom, are we live? Hello. There's only me on the screen. Okay. Uh, Hopefully you can hear me, guys. I'm so sorry. We did have a bit of a problem there, technical problem. Typical, typ- typical fashion just before we went live. There's only me on the screen. Okay. Uh, Hopefully you can hear me, guys. I'm so sorry.
Neil is currently off screen, although I can steer his microphone. I'm not sure he can hear us. I'm not sure what's going to happen. But I will do a brief introduction to the show. We were due to be live at Confex right now, this afternoon, and obviously for all the reasons we know, and for many that came to pass since
we weren't able to do that. And so we decided that we would put on a live show instead, bring in a couple of guests, a couple that we've spoken to on the phone, one person that we've never spoken to before, and Mandy, who I think has been on once or twice previously, just to do a general chat about the current state of the industry. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm just going to, in the interest of trying to get Neil back on screen, I'm going to ask Callum to take us to a holding slide just for a few seconds. We will attempt to get Neil back in, and then we will come straight back in with the show. Apologies for the delay, but we will get this sorted, and we'll be right back with you.
Well, hello again. This is an eventful show, isn't it? You name it, it's happening today. So we've done about 50 odd of these shows, and this is probably the first time we've had this kind of thing happen to us. Anyway, I'm going to draw a line under it. Let's crack on with the show. Hopefully everybody can hear me and see me in the chat room. Well, hello again. This is an eventful show, isn't it? You name it, it's happening today. We've done about 50 odd of these shows. And sorry, we're still having technical problems. Just go to the holding slide, guys, and we may have to We are back again. Hello, welcome to Groundhog Day of the Delegate Wranglers live show. Never mind the state of the industry. What about the state of this show? Anyway, let's move on. So hopefully, I hope you guys can all hear and see me now. If you can, if you could let me know in the chat room, that would be great. Back again. Hello, welcome to Groundhog, and we will carry on of the Delegate Wranglers live show. Never mind the state of the industry. What about the state of this show? Anyway, let's move on. So hopefully, guys, sorry guys, I think I've managed to solve that now. So hopefully you can hear us now and you can hear me okay. And I kept hearing double echoes of myself and you could probably hear that. Anyway, let's move on. So we're going to bullet through this because we're going to run a little bit longer. Apologies, probably till about 1:45 to get through everything that we need to. And yeah, so Dom, are you there and with us?
Hello, Neil. Yeah, we've been here the whole time and we are all good. What
Good
a start.
stuff. Yeah, good stuff.
What a start. No, we're good, and I'm looking forward to this show, albeit we're slightly delayed, but we are all good now. So I think the easiest thing, we won't do our normal long intro. I think just get on and I'll let you introduce our guests.
Yes, I will. So I don't know if we can put them on screen, and I'm going to introduce our guest very briefly. So I'm very delighted to have to join us today for this State of the Industry discussion. Three experts and fellow members of the Delegate Wranglers. We've got Amanda Murray, who worked within the event industry for 25 years across numerous fields, from classical to rock and pop and experiential marketing, you name it. Amanda started her own production company in 2014, Max Live Events. And I love this, whose ethos is to be a rather good production company. Fantastic. So welcome to you, Amanda. I'm just going to introduce Mandy as well. We've got Mandy Jennings, a good friend of mine who's the director of paid consultancy and also Venues of Excellence as well, fairly recently. Congratulations. Mandy's got 30 years experience in senior sales roles, Le Meridian, Marriott, De Vere, Principal, tons and tons of things. And she's also a board director for Academic Venue Solutions, Imago Venues, and Ashbourne Hill Management Centre. And then we've got Craig McGee. Craig comes from the event management side more so. Craig has a choose life first philosophy. He loves travel, good food, cultures and football, but we won't talk about that, Craig, after the other night's result. Professionally, he's run events all over the world for 19 years, from humble beginnings in Glasgow bars, and then running major festivals and MICE events in Brazil, and you name it, from a very young age as well. So Craig now runs Panoptic Events, and in 2014, and up to 2014, since 2014, has delivered over 3,000 experiences for clients such as Microsoft, Audi, and Red Bull. Welcome, guys. Nice to see you. Amanda, I will say hello to you first. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for your patience.
Absolute pleasure. It's been quite nice sort of sat here in the backstage area. It's quite nice to be this side of the camera for once.
And not be the one panicking. So Amanda, do you want to give us, obviously things, I guess, have changed for you massively from doing predominantly, I'm thinking, in-person events to predominantly online events. How is it for you? How's your snapshot for you at the moment?
Absolutely, it's been totally different. So we've gone from producing 40 plus in-person events from March last year to basically everything being virtual this year. I've seen an interesting swing in terms of business because my core market before the pandemic was award ceremonies, and post-pandemic I would say that swung much more towards being conferences, and I would say that's largely because they translate much better to a virtual sitting. You can get a lot of content over quite well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm sat at the moment in terms of how the business has swung.
Yeah. Same to you, Mandy. Obviously doing a lot of in-person events, and for all the venues and all the training things that you do. How's things been for you at the moment?
I think it's been a real roller coaster ride for venues. from having to close to trying to open, close again, and this whole kind of roller coaster ride. And I think a lot of the venues we work with have been fortunate to be able to trade through this because they're part of bigger organisations, so academic venues, universities. But I think we're really in quite a tricky situation for the people at the moment, because you've got the two schools of some people who've been working all the way through, and then some people who've been on furlough, and it feels quite vulnerable, to be fair. I think we've got to tread carefully right now and bring teams back, and that's what we're trying to focus on is getting the teams back together again, feeling more confident. And to be honest, we've got to instill that confidence in the customers to want to come back and have live meetings. So very much around that at the moment, I would say, from the training side particularly.
So we'll come back to how you're moving forward and how you've had to adapt in a second. Craig, how about you? I know you've set up new things during the pandemic the last year or so. Do you want to tell us a bit about how it's been for you and how you've had to adapt a little bit?
I think it's been an interesting time, obviously, for all of us. But like at the start, I just basically got on my bike one day and wrote out the next 90-day plan at the end of March and was like, right, this is a situation. We can't look at where the future's going to be. We have to look at right now, and started a kind of long-term strategy. At that point, things we knew we were moving forward were working. So I just essentially brought it down to 5 things that we wanted to make sure happened, what we needed in the business. And I just asked a question, which I loved from podcasts, which was, if you could go back and start again, what would you change? And kind of made sure that we had all that in place. And in that, we've been giving away a lot of resources from learning from people, giving away a lot of ebooks. We started a podcast recently as well, and that's been fun. I've just been a lot of reaching out, but kind of maintained a kind of positive by having to stay in the present state and not being too worried about what the climate, the really bad card that we've been given essentially there overall. So just try to remain positive throughout.
Yeah, it's been a tough time, hasn't it, Dom? And I know we've got quite a few. Sorry, before we go any further, should we just say a quick hello to some of the people watching in the chat room? And also, guys, thanks for your patience. If you've got any questions, please send them into put them in the chat, and we'll try and ask as many as we can as well.
We will. I'll just jump in and say hi to Claire Whitecross, to Tia. Lovely to see you again. Tom Morley's watching. Hello, Tom. Anna Maria. Who else we got?
Steve Burton, Claire Whitecross, Charlotte, Joe.
And some lovely comments. But as Neil said, we are really interested in getting your comments on this. It's kind of it's a panel discussion with the 5 of us on screen, but I'd like to get as many comments in from you on what your thoughts are on the current state of the industry. So I'm going to go and have a look at the Facebook comments, and then I'll jump over to LinkedIn. Neil, while you perhaps take over.
Yeah. So thanks and apologies if we were just losing Dom's audio there, guys. We'll work on that. It's been a challenging show. So guys. So if I can come back to you, Amanda. Obviously, what's been the massive changes for you in the last 12 months or so? Was there a point when you suddenly thought, wow, I'm going to have to change doing what I do, fundamentally change my business and what I'm doing? And, has it given you new scope and new ideas and new ways forward as well?
Yes, absolutely. All of that. I think probably for the first 6 months, mainly to sort of maybe October, November last year, we were all sort of treading water with these kind of like virtual events and virtual experiences in a kind of replacement or placeholder for the live event. And I think at that point there became a change in thinking of them as events in their own rights, and maybe something that in the future we can run concurrently with physical events, and actually it not being the devil. I think to begin with, from my perspective, the perspective of my clients and the delegates, guests, etc., virtual and everything we were doing was seen as the poor cousin, and something that we kind of had to do to appease sponsors and in order to still be able to deliver content in the sense of conferences. And now I think it's not becoming that evil twin sister anymore. They're starting to be seen as events in their own right, and also something positive that can exist alongside physical events. You know, there's a lot of positive things about virtual. You know, its accessibility, for making an event global, for attracting a different market, for more coverage for sponsors, and also a way of actually encouraging people back into that physical event setting. I mean, Mandy mentioned it earlier on. There's a danger that people don't necessarily want to come back because they don't feel safe. And I think there's a whole kind of move around trying to do that hybrid event in lots of different ways, in order to kind of have a whole package that works together. And there was that real change at the beginning of last year. And we're sort of riding that roller coaster now with our clients and with our teams, and also discovering that there isn't a one fit for all. Every single client, every single different market is different because of their attendees. And some, you know, particularly with awards events, there's a lot of markets we work in where people are very are happy to take risks, so they absolutely want to get back into a venue, but there are other markets where they don't, and it's just being bespoke, I think.
I'm going to come to getting corporates and how we think corporates are, when they're going to be allowed back fully to do live events. And we're going to come to that in a bit later on. So Mandy, with regards to some of your venues and things, how has it been for them in particular? What have they kind of learned? Have they learned that they've had to adapt and change the offers that they do at their venues? And, is it something positive that's going forward will actually help them as well?
Yeah, I do. I go back to this roller coaster ride. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
That we've been through. But what I think that's done is kind of brought us back to the level a little bit. All those things that we used to consider many moons ago now are really important again, which actually has done us a bit of a favour, I think. The basics of having really good partnerships with people, about trusting partners in venues, about it not just being about a price war, about actual safety is paramount, quality is really important. All the things, the ethos that, personally, and Venues of Excellence and the guys we work with really believe in. I think, it's bringing back to the frame again what's really important for customers when they're booking an event, and made us think about it. And actually go back to the basics of making sure that we're really considering what people want. It may be hybrid, it may be face-to-face, but actually taking time to really listen to our customers and make them feel secure, I think is one of the biggest lessons we've learned in the last few months. And I think encouraging people, to train people again, get them back to making the customers feel safe and we're looking after them is probably one of the biggest lessons. I think personally, what have I learned is that flipping out, life's too short.
Yeah.
We only get one shot. Dom's nodding his head, the poor guy. God, what a journey. But for all of us, we've been to the wall and back. Yeah. We've had to rethink our businesses. I'm sure everybody on this screen thought they were going to lose theirs at some point through this roller coaster. But you know what? We're not going to. We're going to come back fighting, and that's what I think. We've got to do that. So that's what it's taught me.
You know what? No, that's brilliant, Mandy, and I think that's dead right. I think it gave everybody. I know we've talked about it on this show a few times. It gave everybody the chance to kind of self-reflect and almost press the reset button, and maybe change your career, give you a free hit to change what you were wanted to do or your approach to things. You suddenly had this opportunity because you were being made to do it. Really, you were almost forced to adapt. So, Craig, I know you guys. That's something that you're big into, aren't you? You're big into self-reflection and moving forward with positivity. Do you want to tell us a bit about the things you've been doing on that front?
Yeah, I think I've been very into self-development through the years and learning about what I used to describe as a load of BS, like visioning, but then actually became somebody that actually started to use it, and how you could use goal setting. But actually working towards proper goals and working in the present day, was actually really, really, it helped because it took away the anxiety of a future which didn't exist. And I think it was just having to kind of remain positive but realistic in a way. I think was one way of having to look at things, you know, and knowing that things were going wrong, but ultimately, right, what can I do today to keep going? And I think a lot of that came down to just like having the routine, like not getting up in the morning and working straight away, stopping that, looking more at getting up, not watching the news, not listening to social media, all these sort of things. Obviously listening to stuff like the Delegate Wranglers, where there's going to be people teaching us stuff, you know, that sort of thing. I'd definitely
right answer, correct answer, Craig, correct answer.
Yeah but that idea, but yeah, but making sure that the noise and the bad stuff around wasn't there and can only focus on, which was mentioned, saving your own business, you know, and it's not just your business, it's your livelihood, it's your house, it's everything else that comes from that. So remaining positive, working forward, and I think just working to a real robust plan. Like, I'm a big believer in them, and it's just making sure that long-term planning is what's going to get you through, not waking up one day not knowing what you're going to do. And the other thing, one tip to add on that, everyone talks about goals as like professional goals, and one thing that really helped me was having 3 personal goals each week, whether that was going out on the bike for 100 miles a week, or whether it was reading a book that week, or learning a new dish to cook. But that, first and foremost, would not allow the anxiety and everything else come in, but it also cleared your head, ready to be professional and actually push your business forward.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice, Craig. I love that. And I'd also say to everybody watching on, thanks, by the way, we finally got everybody watching on LinkedIn and on Facebook and on YouTube. If you've got any thoughts on, like, or you want to share some of the things that you've learned from the last 12, 15 months, or even the last few months, because I think it's almost like 2 or 3 periods, I think, of lockdown. There was the first one where we were all in shock. Everybody's having online parties, calling your friends, group calls,
Zoom
quizzes, everything. And then the second one was a bit more, everybody was a bit more reflective and a bit more, maybe a bit down by the second time it came around. And then I feel like since we turned the year, it's been a bit more positive. People have been thinking, right, we can see a way out, we can see the route. So if you've got any thoughts, guys, on anything you've learned during, those stages of lockdown, we'd love to hear about it. So please put them in the chat, or ask us any questions, or, ask Craig about his 100-mile cycling every week.
We've had some comments and questions come in already. There's one coming from Chris Vernon Smith on LinkedIn, which I'm going to direct to you, Amanda. A lot of our clients are concerned that the virtual audience on a hybrid event will be the cheap seats. What are your thoughts on how to deal with this?
It's a very good question. It's very much seeming to depend on what market you're in, and whether you think a virtual event would actually damage your physical ticket sales or not, or whether it would enhance it. And it's something that I'm running through with various clients. In one case, which is an award show, we're looking at the award event happening physically for the 600 people. But when it happened virtually, actually it's two awards events for the same client. One is normally 1,200, and when we ran it virtually, there was an audience of 24,000. Another one, which is 600, and when we ran it virtually, there was an audience of 4,000. So they are not expecting the idea of having a physical event to damage their virtual. The other way around, sorry, having a virtual event to damage their physical event sales, because there is a market in that demographic for people to attend a physical event. And that is largely the theory and the feelings that I'm having actually across all markets, is that people want to get back to being face to face. They want to get back to that in-room experience, that networking side of things. And so having a physical event at one ticket price and a virtual event at another ticket price is not necessarily a negative thing. You would just have to offer a different package, so that your package for your physical event has an increased value to it. We're only going to see when we start running them, but that's kind of the general feel that I'm getting across from all my clients.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and we've seen largely similar. I think I actually, Chris, I'll say directly, I actually understand the concern. I think that it's been a concern all the way through, and I don't think it's an easy one particularly to overcome. And actually the only way you can overcome it is by trying. And we've been in the fortunate situation with many of our clients, Amanda included, where we've had the opportunity to try and experiment. We've seen things work. So I don't think any of the clients that we now work with would consider the hybrid being a cheap seat or the virtual aspect being a cheap seat as such. But it does very much depend on the audience. It very much depends on how you engage that audience, and also ultimately also down to the platform and the method by which you bring all of those aspects together, the virtual and the live together. So I think there's a much bigger picture to look at there. And I don't think it's as simple as just saying, yes, it's this, but I do think experimentation and having the opportunity to try helps.
And I think the idea of being able to information share would be good. I know we're not always good at doing it because nobody wants to be the first one to try a virtual and a physical and that not work. But I think between us, we need to be able to be saying as a community, hey, we've done this event, it was physical and it had a virtual, which might be seen as a cheap sheet. It worked or it didn't work. I think that's an important thing moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, got this comment there from Sammy Allen. Hi, Sam, by the way, on LinkedIn. Audiences have changed. Virtual events has created choice on top of everything else and creating inclusivity. Add on the climate crisis, and we have no choice as event pros but to look at new ways of bringing people together. Interesting times ahead. I think that's a really fair comment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, apart from anything, just the impact that it's had on the environmental, the climate has been enormous, and I think it's made. Anyone that took the environment and climate seriously prior to this, and not everyone does, and each to their own. However, anyone that took it seriously prior to this has seen the huge benefits that a virtual world can bring. We've got clients that won't go back to putting some live events on. We've got some clients that will probably carefully choose which ones they put on. And that's for a whole host of reasons, but it's definitely, absolutely includes the climate side.
Yeah, we've also had some comments about things that people have learned. Destination Sardinia, hello, on the Facebook group. I've learned to run webinars, whereas I was used to meeting buyers at trade shows, and this is a new platform and skills, and at least I've learned how to do that as well. So I guess it's another string to your bow as well. Tom Morley saying, hi Tom, people used to show me photos of their kids at on-site conferences. Now they're actually at the online conferences dancing together. I love it. That's classic Tom. So listen guys, I'm going to just move forward. So assuming that we come out of lockdown in a few weeks, who knows? What are the next? I mean, I know this is a tricky question to answer, and I'm not going to expect you guys to come up with everything. But Craig, what do you think are the next step for us? As an industry generally, what are the next steps that we need to do to I guess to reinforce things like reinforcing confidence in people, and what Mandy was saying about safety and stuff like that.
Yeah, massive. And I've said since day one that the time when events are going to become full again is when the football stadiums and the live concerts and the festivals are full again. And a lot of people have obviously been saying that throughout. So we kind of need to build the trust. Us as event planners are going to be building events. We're keen to get back. We know people that are willing to come along to these events. Then it comes to the companies who want to put the events on, but then the companies have staff who might not want to go to said events, and there's that whole element of trust that has to go through. So we've looked at ways of potentially having farm trips where we bring essentially media in as opposed to just buyers, and actually being able to say, right, okay, come in here and see it in a safety concern. And that might also be bringing in clients that can have a look at it and report back and go, this is actually what we're going through. So obviously safety's always been paramount at events. It's first and foremost. It's how that's marketed. Of that, it's going to start to build the trust, build the confidence, And I think as well, people have kind of get used to being in the house and maybe not wanting to sit in traffic jams up and down motorways or sitting in airports for hours and hours, So where people are now is events that you're going to have to be worth going to. They have to be not stuffy meeting rooms, for example. There has to be something that makes you want to go.
Yeah.
But there has to be content that makes you want to come along, whether it's festivalisation, whether it's gamification, whether it's edutainment. It's these sort of things that basically people are wanting to go, that's actually interesting. I'm going to go to that event. Whereas you could actually have the face-to-face meetings sitting in your living room or in your kitchen, So there's,
You know what, though, Craig, we always have, haven't we? It's always been the elephant in the room, you know, online events. We've always been able to watch presentations, and before Zoom there was Skype and stuff like this. But it's the real things that you do in the room, that those connections that you make, that's a real important. So Mandy, sorry, Craig, just moving over to you, Mandy. How have your venues approaching this as well? I guess they're now into the full kind of planning for restart and stuff like that. Are they taking any particular steps themselves?
Yeah, I think a lot of them have been operating to some degree all the way through, but it is this kind of bringing everybody back together now is the really important thing. And I think, we've talked about safety, confidence, building trust. And I think, if ever there was a time for leaders to show their value, is now, is that they've really got to bring their teams in and instill this kind of confidence level that not only are, events safe to run, but they're safe in their workplace, in the venue. And I think the other thing is, my optimistic approach is that we're going to come out of this and have the best boom time we've seen since the last recession, because that's what always happens is that we really need to get our shop window looking beautiful. And actually, if I'm being really honest, at the moment, we're struggling to get hold of people in some venues. We're struggling to get through to the right people, to get the basics. So if I was in any venue, I would be saying, right, okay, let's pretend we're opening this venue from scratch. Let's just really think about, have we got an exciting proposition here? Have we got our pricing right? We don't need to start dropping our prices. We need to start thinking about what quality we're adding, what value we're adding. And, what's our story? How are we going to stand out in a marketplace that's going to be packed with venues wanting to fill them again? So that if ever there was an exciting moment to get your team back in and talk about, what are those initiatives we're going to do? How can we be creative?
Yeah.
What can we do to be exciting? So we had a members forum last week with our Venues of Excellence guys, and confidence was number one. Continuity, because we need to prove to people again that we are capable of getting everything, exactly as they want it, instill in event organisers. But innovation is probably the big thing that venues really need to think about. How can we stand out from the crowd? So,
totally agree, Mandy. I've been at a couple of venues last week doing Delegate Wranglers, like venue showcases and things, and those are the things that came across. The extra things that they had on offer to entice people to come and to have a totally different and engaging experience. So with that in mind, Amanda, just wanted to ask you, it's going to be a tricky period for you when real life events come back and people want to do both, because we've had this discussion on here a few times. That's a tricky thing to do because they're two different beasts altogether, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think it depends on how you treat them as well, as in whether you treat your virtual arm of it as simply a stream, so you are just streaming the event, or whether it's its own standalone event, its own standalone conference, effectively, or a reward show. The main thing we're looking at with award ceremonies is simply a stream. So we're literally, our physical event will go live at 9:30, our stream will go live at 9:30, and it's just a way for people to tune in, for sponsors to get that additional coverage that they're used to now having. There's so many different participants within this to consider. Sponsors on some of the larger events have got used to viewing figures of, like I say, in the thousands, whereas in a physical event they might only be hitting 1,200 people. There's just so many things to be considered about it, or like we say, whether it's a completely almost a standalone event, so it's got its own networking within it as well as just being content. But I think it depends on what you're trying to absorb. I mean, Craig was having some fantastic buzzwords there, and I've never heard edutainment before, but I think that's an awesome word. Definitely going to be using that one. But yeah, that draw. Why are people coming to an event, whether it's physical or or virtual?
Yeah, absolutely. Dom, I know we've got a couple of questions in the
Well, there's a couple of comments, certainly. So Melanie Cash, and I think this is a really interesting one. I've been surprised at how well it's worked for me to run virtual training sessions with teams. As long as you can really plan how you make the sessions no more than 2 to 3 hours, including 2 to 3 breakout sessions, and keep them really interactive, I'd have no hesitation in continuing to offer and in fact recommend virtual training sessions to clients. It avoids lots of travel, more cost effective, and it's a better use of time. And I think the combination of the travel, the cost effectiveness, and the use of time has been really, really important for people. And we've seen that in how conference organisers particularly have approached booking speakers for their events, because they weren't having to book really big name speakers for 2 to 3 days and relying on them travelling and the costs associated with that. We've had some really big name speakers for the industries that we've produced conferences in. And because they've only had to book 2 to 3 hour speaker slots at a time, it's meant they've been able to go for those bigger names, those bigger guests. So the virtual side of that for some of those events has been huge.
I think that might change though now. I think that might have been a special offer for pandemic season.
Do you think?
I get the impression that if this becomes the norm, speakers' costs will go back up to what they were.
And yet they don't have to leave their house.
Yeah.
Tia made the comment, it'll be interesting to see how the audience is split at upcoming industry exhibitions with the option of both live and virtual available. It will be interesting because I don't think anybody knows. And I think had Confex, for example, gone ahead this week, it would have been really interesting to see what the split on that one was. But certainly as we go into Q3 into September, I'm really interested to see what audience choose to do, because it will be a little bit more choice then than it is mandatory to just stick to the virtual. And actually on that subject of Q3, William McGee on LinkedIn says, for us, there's a real buzz around events. September seems to be the go date as 90% of events move to Q3, and I've seen an influx of exhibition stand briefs. It's certainly a lot more promising than it was 3 months ago. And I don't think anyone could disagree with that. And then the last comment that I saw was from Simon at Unified Afternoon. Simon, he said, completely agree that content and engagement are key for all events, virtual or live, to be memorable and deliver ROI. And sorry, Daria's just come in. Definitely a special deal on speakers. It won't last.
So now I'm going to get to thanks for all those comments, guys. Keep them coming in, by the way. Going to get to a meaty question now and a meaty subject. How are we going to move things forward? You know, just as an industry, there's been a lot of talk about getting back to where we were in March 2020 and stuff like this. I think personally we're going to have to move forward because things have changed. Any thoughts on that, Craig? You know, what's going to how we do that? What it's going to pan out like? You know, is it still going to be tentative for the rest of this year, and then 21, 22, kick in a little bit more?
Obviously, going forward, I mean, we have potentially got quite a packed Q4, so we're sort of fingers crossed. If anything happens, they're great. If not, but I think like the way I kind of want to go with terms of the moving forward as an industry is looking at a lot of the themes and looking at the way we ran events before, and it was touched on slightly earlier, talking about sustainability, and I think that's a total rethink of how events should be operated and looking at sustainable options for events moving forward, where it may not be less travel and stuff like that, but looking to bring in local suppliers and taking an industry-wide approach from the organisers, the venues, right through to the attendees, so there's a lot to be said in that field at the moment, and certainly should be part of all plans going forward. And that's just from a huge outreach we've been doing to clients and finding out their CSRs and what they've been trying to do throughout the whole period. So certainly looking at that, looking at values, refining business models, redesigning events, and pretty much just going with stuff that's going to educate, excite and engage an audience, certainly to move events forward.
So yeah, I totally agree, Craig. It's going to be really interesting. I mean, Mandy, coming back to you, do you feel that you getting, like, with that in mind, one, I'd love to know your thoughts on that subject, but also, are you getting kind of different inquiries through? Are your venues getting different inquiries through these days?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen the influx start to come back probably a couple of months ago, but just before the last kind of extension to the lockdown, it was really optimistic. And, the venues were saying They're starting to see inquiries through. Certainly we were seeing, and the joy was it wasn't just the kind of essential training type. It was the events that were postponed from before lockdown now saying we want to put our, a line in the sand. We really want to book it this time. Look for us. And I think people are becoming confident again. I think there will always be this mix. And I think what's happened is we'll have learnt, best practice around, when do we have to meet in person and when can we do it virtually? I think there'll be a much better blend. It makes sense from people's time and energy. I absolutely reiterate what Mel said about the training. We've learned loads around the training side where we would struggle to get people to travel. Actually, what we've been able to do is provide great training, a mixture of trainers, which we've never been able to do that in one venue. So, I think there's some really good things and lessons learned from lockdown. But I also think it feels to us, in this world that things are starting to come back to normal. And I think that from that date when we're open again, I really do feel this is the way. Yeah.
Speaking from Delegate Wranglers' perspective, I mean, we're seeing tons more inquiries on the group now, tons more, hot leads of like big numbers or larger numbers for venues and things, and all manner of different suppliers. So it's definitely coming back and getting stronger and stronger. Go on, Dom.
No, I was going to ask you on that actually, because I think again the DW group has been a pretty good barometer all the way through this, and I know it went really, really quiet March, April, May time, and obviously numbers came right down. But beyond just the level of inquiries, you've got to be seeing a difference in the engagement, for example, in things like supplier hour, and if anything, that might have increased. But what about just general engagement on the group in terms of comments, likes on posts? What are you seeing?
Yeah, you know what? To be honest, since lockdown began, probably the rate of people joining the Delegate Wranglers has gone up.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot more people wanting to join, which I think is a combination of people then looking and having the time to think about different things that they've heard they should be doing.
Yeah.
Maybe new people coming into the industry and got moving, the merry-go-round of people moving around. So people joining from different companies and things like that. So, and then in terms of the engagement, we're getting, particularly now as well, huge engagement for anything that we post. And also all the supplier hour posts are becoming thick and fast. People are using them really well. We've also got the Superstars Club as well. So people are really using the Superstar Hour as well to stand out from the crowd. So, it's going really well from that perspective for us, to be honest. So, Amanda, I was just going to ask you, how's it been for you in terms of the inquiries and the jobs that are coming in for you now? Have you noticed a significant change? And are you predicting that things will go back to where we were in March 2020, or are you thinking it's going to be totally different? It's a totally different world out there now.
Again, I think it's going to depend on the client. I know I keep saying this like a repeating thing, but most of my inquiries for Q3 and Q4 are all physical events, and they are, which is great. And in general, they're the ones that were existing in 2019 and 2020. I think it is going to take a good 18 months to get back to where we were in March 2020 because of the fact that everybody's budgets are lower, and there's a real danger. I think all of us have touched upon it about keeping those kind of like budget levels at a reasonable point, in the sense of, and I know Dom agrees with me, it's about charging a fair price for doing a fair job. And I think that some of what I'm sadly seeing already is that it's becoming a bit of a race to the bottom. There are clients who are giving out budgets that are 20, 30, up to 50% lower than they were in March 2020. And there will be somebody somewhere who will do it. And it's across the board. It's not only, it's venues, it's all across suppliers. And everybody is coming out of this struggling. And we need to be fair, I think, is the main thing. I think I've slightly diverted off what the question was.
That's okay.
But it's quite an important point. But interestingly, I am seeing a change in my business, in the sense of that I will still have ideally still have the existing work, and that's what's all the forecast is from my perspective, but I also now have a virtual arm as well, and that is still looking at being very strong. Particularly some international events that are happening are still going to be virtual. So actually I'm expanding my team in order to be able to offer that service to our clients in both the physical and the virtual side of things.
Really interesting.
And I think that, sorry, can I just jump in on one point that Amanda made there? Because the other challenge that you've got with this is where the live events are starting to come back, the budgets are slightly reduced, as Amanda said, by as much as 50% in some cases. And it is always forever going to be a race to the bottom. There will always be someone that's willing to do it cheaper. But don't forget that there are some clients that want to take the hybrid idea forward. And inherently, there are additional costs in running that side. And so we've been very keen to make sure that we still get paid a fair rate for doing the fair job that we're expected to do. But there's no question that you're asking budgets to do more for slightly less, and that's a real challenge.
Yeah, and I think it's looking at where you take that money from.
Yeah.
As in, if there's only a fixed pot, but you need to have a hybrid event as well, it's being much more engaged with our clients. And I think it's all about us working as teams. So we can be very splintered. We can have very much our client and then the venue and then our producer and all our suppliers. And I think that when it works best is actually when we worked collaboratively. And I think given the fact that we're going to be so challenged, we need to work as teams.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it'd be interesting to find out from any of the guys watching as well, what kind of inquiries you've been getting in, and, has budgets being affected, and is there a bit of confusion about budgets and stuff like that? So if anybody's got any thoughts on that, drop us a line. We'd love to know. Craig, I'm just going to come to you, leading on from that, actually. One of the things that's kind of changed a little bit is contracting. The way contracts are done with hotels, and I'm sure Mandy can help us with this one as well, hotels and venues and suppliers in general, because nobody could be sure that the event that they were planning was going to actually happen and stuff like that. Have you noticed any changes or any benefits that have happened as a result of this?
I think a lot of it was, if we go back to the 3 parts of the lockdown, I think at the start there was that, will we go online? And then some people in the second part going, right, we're going to go online. And then suddenly there was that delay that live looked as if it was coming back. So there was a hesitancy that side. But when it comes to the live stuff, people might get the proposals out. And we've been doing a lot. We had 5 that went out last week, for example. And it's there's the wait now for us. And it's obviously the 21st of June, obviously delaying to the middle of July. It's how much longer that's going to be. So we're a few times just not getting towards that contracting stage as such yet from the events that we're close to. Because I think there's just a hesitancy for people to actually sign, despite the fact that the hotels are offering better terms and the venues are offering better terms.
Well, it's the big knock-on effect, isn't it, of all the other suppliers as well. If the hotel contract's not been signed or whatever, the AV people might not be able to do the caterers and the entertainment, and there's lots of different knock-ons, isn't there?
Well, that's some of our suppliers went out of business last year. That was sad to see in terms of catering companies, cater hire companies as well, and even sort of kind of along the marquee side of things. So we had a reluctance from clients that wanted to book or pay deposits for companies that might sadly not make it to the other side. So it's, again, goes back to confidence,
Yeah, absolutely. Mandy, coming to you then. Same question really about contracts and things. I guess, it's a difficult one. It's difficult from both sides, isn't it? The whole contract.
Yeah, I mean, that contract word is always a tricky one, isn't it? But I mean, from what I've seen throughout the time, I think venues particularly have been hugely flexible, far more than I've ever seen in my career, if I'm being really honest about it, when we've been through other very difficult periods. Because I think the first lockdown, everybody's like, oh my word, what we're going to do? Okay, actually, let's be flexible, because then we'll get the business the next time. But when it's happening the second time and third time, and we've got to understand that some of these venues are going out of business because they're not getting the income coming in. It's a really tricky situation. So sadly, we've seen lots of the agencies, we've lost lots of venues. So there's got to be a fair way in the future. But I think what it's taught us in venue world is that actually to be flexible, to listen to your customer, and to work together, to Amanda's point, as you know, with your agency, your venue, and the client together to come up with the best solution, to me has always been the way to look at contracting. I think as an industry, we've had quite an old-fashioned contract system in venues, which has been, updated on occasions by HBAA and MIA. But I would absolutely say now is the time to have another review of that flexibility and build things in for the future.
You know why, Mandy? Because I think it's going to be interesting once that we can come back to meeting in person, and it's done a lot more. How quick it might revert back to the bad old days.
Yeah.
So that's going to be an interesting thing, isn't it? Like you say,
to me, now's the time to be,
exactly.
A trusted advisor. This is the time for us to go back to those really good ways of working together and thinking through what's best for the customer. But at the end of the day, we're all businesses. We've got to make sure we're covered, that we can survive this. But yeah, I think it's time for a refresh on that area, right, definitely.
We've all heard it now. Mandy said she's going to box it off. So we'll look forward to that.
Well, that's by next week, shall we?
So how about you, Amanda, as well? Do you get involved with the contracting side from, with venues and supplies and things? And have you seen it change? And do you anticipate it changing when we come back again?
I think what Mandy was saying about it, again, going back to the collaborative process, is an absolutely brilliant one. I actually, although I hate to say this, don't get involved as enough as I probably should do in contracts. So there's pre-existing clients who I've got long-standing relationships with that I do, but I quite often will get given a contract after it's been signed and basically told to deal with what's in it. Which is usually that I can't load in when I need to load in, that the power is going to cost £4 million, that there are curfews all over the shop. I mean, Dom and I'm not going to name names, recently went on a site visit where we literally walked out and said, this venue is not fit for purpose. And had we been involved in that contracting process 18 months before, when the contract was signed, we could have avoided all of that. And so I think, and there's quite often secrecy about contracts as well. And they don't need to be. I don't need to know what my client's paying for a venue, because that bit can easily be taken out. But it is always worthwhile showing your production company or your producer your venue contract. And again, the same with supplier contracts, because there are bits in it that pertain to all parties. But in general, I am seeing, unless it's a virtual event, I am seeing a complete lack of anybody wanting to sign anything, even if it's got COVID clauses in it. And again, there are certain elements that sometimes for an event that you would do free of charge to a certain extent, because the event is going to happen, and therefore that would cover your costs. But that's an interesting thing, I think, that we need to look at in terms of contracting moving forwards. Is you're telling me you're going to have this massive event running in November. In order to do that event, I need to start working on it now, and some of that will be costs that you may say you don't need to incur because they're costs within a company, but some of them will be physical costs, even if it's travel to site visits or you're needing to talk to other experts, etc. And I think that will be an interesting thing to try and build into contracting from my side of things, because otherwise I could end up spending not hundreds of thousands of pounds, but thousands of pounds on work for us to go into lockdown in September, and that's what will kill my business.
I think, as well, going back to what Mandy said, and I totally agree with you on a lot of those points there, Amanda. It's going to, hopefully, it will bring a more collaborative approach to contracting and a bit more care and understanding for both sides. Rather than this is the letter of the law, you've signed the contract. It's, let's have a bit. I think there'll be a bit more flexible and leeway. I could be wrong, but I'm hoping that that's one of the byproducts of the whole COVID the year that we've had, that something like that will come out of it that will make everyone's life more collaborative and better for everybody, really.
There's a couple of comments coming, Neil, if you don't mind.
Yes,
Sam McNeil on Facebook. Good afternoon, Sam. Haven't heard
Sam.
your name for a while. Expecting a quieter few months at the end of the year while clients hold out for face-to-face but won't sign any contract or pay deposits until they're 100% certain the event can go ahead, and only then go ahead safely. Then the floodgates to open for face-to-face, virtual and hybrid. And Tom Morley said, I've been booking Cirque du Soleil contortionists and acrobats broadcasting from their own kitchens. Of course you have, Tom.
Standard day for Tom.
Hybrid has brilliant possibilities. I could never afford to get them together on site, but an hour at home is viable and very impressive. A contortionist in a kitchen. Tom, I think we'd all like to see that.
Tom's on the show next week. It's our guest book for next week there.
Absolutely. Next week's show sorted.
Okay, guys, well, we're just going to wrap this up, but just like a couple of... I'll come to each of you in turn. I'll start with you, Craig. Just the last comment on, how we think the next 6 months are going to be for the industry and, what changes we might see possibly?
I think just what we're trying to always work on this, as I mentioned already, in the 90-day plan. So I'm trying to kind of keep in that period, and I think it's just kind of be lean the next. To keep the kind of business. I've got a drill outside my house at the moment in case anyone can hear that. I think just kind of come back to me on this one. I do come back because that drill's in my head.
The drill, it's like drill. Okay, I'll come to you. Who wants to go next? Anyone ready?
I don't mind.
Okay, go on, Amanda.
Just a sort of a point to be aware of, really. I think if Q3 and Q4 do what we are kind of hoping for them to do, which is that there's a massive explosion of business, something we need to be really careful about is not being overcautious about booking things, because otherwise we're going to have no crew and no equipment. I mean, I'm already finding it for a week in September that basically everything is already booked up for one specific day. It just seems this one day everybody wants everything, and I'm already having to compromise on what kind of entertainment I want. So yeah, don't leave it too long to book things in, but also don't book it in too soon, because then you might put deposits down and the client might not pay you. So it's a really tricky tightrope line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was the tightrope there in the reference to another Cirque du Soleil performer that Tom might book?
If it's coming for the kitchen, I'll have one of those. That sounds right up my street.
Over to you, Mandy. Any thoughts for the next 6 months or so?
I think that it's really important to stay close to our customers, and we've said this all the way through, but now it's really, what are they planning? Because if we do have this surge, there's almost this, okay, you need to get your dates in, your events in. So let's start talking in that positive language rather than how are you, obviously how are you is nice and so on, but more of a proactive, positive approach. I think one thing from a venues is that, it's tough on these operations guys that are back, in there with lots of extra things now that they have to think about. And I would say, let's be kind to people working on events and venues, but really focus on your story. What is it you're trying to come out of this pandemic with? Focus on your own story, whatever your business is. Sustainability is going to be a massive ticket. What are you doing in that area? So think creatively, and never has there a time been to reinforce your partnerships, your relationships with customers.
Absolutely, yeah.
All about that good stuff.
It's so difficult, isn't it? It's so difficult at the moment because we're all in a bit of limbo at the moment, and every time we think there's the finish line, it gets moved a little bit further as well. So I think we're all a bit battle scarred from it. Would you agree, Craig? We're all a bit weary of it.
Yeah. I think it's just constant outreach to people, to talk to them, find out exactly how they are and stuff, and find out what innovations they're coming up with as well, and building that into the events for sure. And what I've kind of found overall, sustainability has become huge in terms of what clients are requesting from us. A lot of that is because it should be happening across all events. There's a big focus in Glasgow, obviously, just now with COP26, so we're getting inundated with requests just now for stuff there. So it's huge to be part of that. I found that a lot of our inquiries on our kind of destination side have been smaller wellness incentives, a bit more high-end C-level kind of managerial, which has been good as well. So we're getting them in the diary and stuff like that, which is good. We've also been involved with a few retail activations as well, because retail seems to be open, so it's looking at other avenues for where you can start to diversify the business. Q4, as I mentioned earlier, is beginning to look quite busy. And it's a really good point it was made in terms of like just making sure that the suppliers are there. On that note, we had 3 tenders arrive in the last couple of days, and it's been quite short lead times to pull the tenders together. But then actually when we're actually meant to be putting these out, mainly I think one's November, it's like, so it's actually being cautious about what's going to be available. And if lots of people are going to be starting these builds and booking in these exhibitions and all these stands and whatever else that starts to happen, it's just making sure the stuff's there, So, just two things that were mentioned. There's two books I'd love to recommend. So, talking about the story is absolutely huge. I'm a big fan of the book called Building a Story Brand. Certainly take it to your own stuff, read the book through and create your own story around that. And also another point that was made in terms of speaking to customers, there's another great book called They Ask, You Answer. And we're using all our marketing just now is all based on customers and clients' questions. And we're putting all that through our website just now. And 2 books that I would thoroughly recommend for anyone in here who has their own business or is self-employed to certainly look at.
What I'll ask you to do, Craig, is drop me the info about those and what who they are, who the authors are, and things, and we'll put them in the wrap up. We'll put them in the wrap up after. We'll put the wrap up online later on with a little snippet of today. So anyway, guys, I'd just like to say thank you so much for one, for bearing with us at the beginning, 2, sticking with us, and 3, for your fantastic contributions to this discussion. It's been really good, and I don't know about you, Dom. I've really enjoyed it. Lots of really good points there as well.
It's been a great conversation. I knew it would be with the people that we had booked, and also I think the people we had booked and anyone watching is very understanding that very occasionally technical issues happen. It doesn't matter where they happen, they do just happen, and there's very little you can do until the world heals itself in that moment. But there's a ton of stuff. We could do 2 or 3 shows on this and still not cover it all, but I think we've had a really good stab at it today, and I'm really grateful for the input that we've had, not just from the people that we got on the panel, Amanda, Mandy and Craig, but also to the people that have commented in the group. And there's a ton of comments that we haven't really had time to get to because it would have taken the conversation on even further than we had time for. But to everyone that is watching, to everyone that has commented, thank you, because it's very, very much appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, especially to everybody on LinkedIn, because this was our first time running it through LinkedIn on my LinkedIn page. So thank you for that. And it seems to work okay, and we'll get better in terms of what happened at the beginning. But thank you for all your comments. It's been, as I say, it's been really, really exciting. And thanks, guys, for thank you 3 of you, to Craig, Amanda and Mandy, for a fabulous show. And we'll appreciate it, really. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
So, Dom, we'll just wrap it up very quickly because I know we're running over a little bit. We've got our weekly lowdown video coming up, which is a little snapshot of positive information from our friends at Mash Media. And as always, Martin Fullard on presenting duties. Check this out, guys.
Hello and welcome to the Delegate Wranglers Weekly Lowdown with Mash Media. As ever, I'm Martin Fullard. Now, the Events Industry Alliance has written to the Prime Minister and the Chancellor of the Exchequer requesting a firm date for the reopening of business events. The letter says that the recent G7 summit, which was managed and organised by creative agency Identity, has proved that business events can be run safely. Now, it calls for the events industry to be considered for a full reopening in a review on the 5th of July, after noting the successful delivery of the event research programme, of which you've all read plenty about. Now, next up, there are still some events actually happening. No Limits Events and Promotions has confirmed that the East of England Auto Fest will be going ahead at the East of England Arena and Event Centre on the 3rd and 4th of July with a full lineup of live automotive action. Now, No Limits Events and Promotions and the East of England Arena and Event Centre have said that it may be necessary to change parts of the show just to comply with changes in local or national COVID-19 guidelines. But it really is great to see that some organisers are still going ahead, of course with safety in mind. Now, lastly, the Meetings Industry Association has announced that it's seeking a new chief executive following news that long-standing chief executive Jane Longhurst is to step down in December. Now, Longhurst was appointed in 2004 and has since gone on to launch the AIM accreditation scheme and initiatives such as the MIA list, which celebrates talent within the sector. She's also helped grow its membership from 320 back then to today way over 800. And if you're interested in that job, I'm sure you can find out more on the MIA's website. And that is your weekly lowdown.
Well said, that man. Big thank you to Marty Fullard.
He does such a good job on those videos.
Oh, he's such a pro, honestly. He just does it in one take. He's just like, there's no editing.
Has he actually told you he's done it in one take?
Well, yeah, maybe he just acts like that on everyone. Take one, testing. But, maybe he says that every time. So, big thank you. We're just going to press on again. Just going to tell you quickly what's coming up on the show in the next few weeks. Next week's going to be an interesting one, a Facebook advertising masterclass. Now, if anybody has ever tried advertising with Facebook, you will know it is a science that is so difficult to master in terms of not only the technical things what you have to do, but the way to get it to work for you. So Sophie Walton from 312 is going to give us a really good masterclass on that. Really, I'm personally really looking forward to that.
I was going to ask, have you ever actually run adverts, Neil?
We've tried a couple of times. Yeah, we've tried a couple of times. But as I say, I don't know if anybody else has. It'd be interesting to know if anybody else has tried.
I will be as well, because it's an absolute minefield. I'm really looking forward to that one. It's pertinent.
Yeah, it's very complicated
about right now. Yeah,
very complicated and also very hard to get right. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then we've got James Morgan from the University of Westminster is going to be giving us a masterclass on designing for behaviour change. So that'll be really interesting as well.
Need to up my game on that one, Neil.
Absolutely, yeah, me too. Then we've got an onboarding with Diane on Thursday the 8th. Then we've got Ken Kelling from Centre Purpose Coaching giving us a Get Your Head Straight masterclass. That's going to be fantastic as well, because anybody who's ever met Ken, you'll know he's fantastic at what he does in terms of the coaching side. And then we've got a Superstars webinar as well the following week. So we've got a busy old month ahead. It would have been even busier if we'd have had Confex. Never mind. But anyway, we replaced Confex with this show. We wouldn't have had this show. So every cloud and all that. So Dom, I think that's it for another show.
It is indeed. It was a good wrap up.
Yeah.
Again, if you were watching right at the beginning on whichever channel, whichever stream you saw, apologies. There are occasionally technical issues that happen, and you saw exactly that right at the beginning of the show. But I think we've recovered. I think we picked ourselves back up. And everyone who has joined, again, I've said it once already, but thank you so much for being involved, for getting involved, and for sticking with us, asking your questions, leaving your comments. Every interaction that we have on this is hugely appreciated, and we love that we're able to actually deliver something of value to you each week.
Yeah, we do it for you guys. Not only do we take some great stuff from it, but we do it all for you. And if you guys didn't watch, we wouldn't put it on. So big thank you for taking the time out, and please spread the word about it. People can watch it on our YouTube channel. All these are saved forever, so anybody can watch any of them. So big thank you to, as always, to Dom, Callum and the team at Stream, and also to Events Case for doing an amazing job on registration for us, as always. Thank you to everybody for watching, and thank you to our amazing guests, Craig, Amanda and Mandy. honestly, I was convinced I was going to get Mandy and Amanda mixed up all the time.
You did well.
But anyway, I did well, yeah, for me. So anyway, Don, thanks to you as well. And
Thank you.
have a great week, guys. And we will see you next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, 1:30. Thanks for watching.